Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are wrapping up our NBA season preview content, going to be giving our award predictions for the year, going to be giving our final power rankings and discussing our NBA champions. But first, let's give our award picks, Logan. So, starting with the biggest of them all, who's your pick for MVP this year?
He's been here before, Carson. I have Nikola Jokic once again reigning as the MVP of all of the basketball. I considered some other great guys here. Giannis, I think, and the Bucks are probably going to win the Eastern Conference. I think if the Celtics end up with the top seed out east, maybe we see Jason Tatum get a little love. But I have the Nuggets coming out atop the West. And I think they have as reliable a regular season formula as any other team in basketball. Jokic is going to work great with Jamal Murray. Even if he's not, we've seen Jokic without Murray, without guys in the regular season, and he's carried them to regular season success. He's one of the greatest offensive elevators in NBA history, and that's what it comes down to me. It's going to be one of the top seeds out in the East or the Western Conference. You've got to win a lot of games to do it. And I think with Embiid taking his, we can finally recrown Nikola Jokic as the king of the NBA. You know, I think we just got voter fatigue last year. I think people were tired of voting for Jokic. He was my MVP. He was your MVP. I think we get back to that this year. So it was tough deciding between Giannis and Jokic. I think those are going to be my top two seeds out East and West. I think either one of those guys gets it done, but I think Jokic reclaims his throne as the best player in the NBA this year and takes home his third MVP.
I'm with you, and I also think that this is pretty much a two-horse race between him and Giannis. I think they definitely have the most reliable blend of elite production and elite team success. Tatum is probably third in this conversation for me just because I think the Celtics are going to win a lot more regular season games than the Sixers. I think that that's a team that is going to take a step back, presumably without James Harden out there, or if he is out there, it's going to be very weird vibes. So to me, Embiid is knocked down a peg in this conversation. I thought the race should have come down to Jokic and Giannis last year. I felt pretty strongly that those were the top two candidates, but Jokic is the most consistently dominant regular season force, and he is the most consistently available. Embiid is obviously going to deal with some sort of injury every single year, but even compared to Giannis, Jokic really has never been hurt in memory, and he doesn't rest a ton. And he's going to be on a great team that I agree with you is going to be the best in the West, and he is the lone superstar talent there. Giannis is going to have the elite offensive production, very good efficiency, neither of which will be quite on par with Jokic's. He's just not that level of brilliant offensive talent. He's not going to have that level of enhancing a team offense too, but then he has a pretty sizable two-way edge. But it does feel to me like a lot more credit in terms of regular season dominance will be given to Dame as that other legitimate superstar, fringe top 10, definitely top 15 player alongside Giannis. Jokic, as you said, we've seen it. Won 2 MVPs, 1 year where he was missing Murray for a third of it, another year where he was missing Murray and MPJ for the entire season. MPJ for the entire year except for 9 games. His last 3 regular seasons, he's averaged 26, 13, and 9 on 68% true shooting. Legitimately unfathomable. He has an average on-off number of plus 14.3 over those 3 seasons. So again, by far the greatest impact in terms of the level his team is playing at when he's off the floor versus on it, which absolutely matters in these conversations. And you mentioned the voter fatigue working against him last year. Some of the ridiculous narratives that we saw pop up. It was really a disgraceful campaign that was made against him in the home stretch of last season. Now it feels like we're going to have the opposite effect. We're going to look and say, all right, well, for 90% of the year, we all said that he deserved it, and then things got really weird, and then he proved that he was the best player on the planet with an all-time great playoff run. Now, I think there could be a movement in the opposite direction saying, let's make sure that he gets his respect. But I also could see the same thing for Giannis if the Bucks do win 60 games, and he hasn't won an MVP in the last 3 years now. He's been in the conversation every one of those seasons. Those to me are the 2 best players on the planet. And they are the best set up to have these dominant statistical regular seasons and this dominant team success. Steph, I don't think can match them in either of those categories. He's my number 3 player in the world. Luka always enters these regular seasons as like co-favorite or outright favorite for MVP. And I have never once felt that he should be the pick, because although we've seen this precedent change a bit in recent years, with Russ winning in 2017, with Jokic winning as a 6th seed, overwhelmingly, you have to be on an elite regular season team. You certainly have to be on a playoff team. You certainly have to be on like a top 6 team in your conference. I don't even see that for the Mavs this year. And so to me, regardless of his statistical production, last year was unbelievable production from him, and he didn't seriously enter those conversations as the year went along, and it just was proven that the Mavs didn't have the necessary level of team success. All right, Rookie of the Year. Who you got, Logan?
Surprise, surprise. I've got Victor Wembanyama. I do think it's going to be a close race, though, between him and Chet Holmgren. I don't know, Chet's almost flown a bit under the radar, Carson, because Vic's gotten so much attention. I think it's going to be close between the two, and I think they're going to have a similar impact. Obviously, Wemby is just a freak. If you've watched any of preseason or any of this leading up, I mean, he looks... I hate we do this KD thing, man. You were talking about that on last show, Carson, how people wanted to compare like Chet to KD and stuff like that. Vic really does, man, with the ball in his hands, with how fluid he is. Looks like big KD moving out there. So I do think they're going to have similar impacts in terms of anchoring a defense, of completely transforming a defense. Chet and Wemby both are generational defensive prospects, and I think are going to completely take the Spurs and Thunder up another level. I mean, you could argue maybe, Carson, basketball historian here, in your opinion, who have been the most impactful rookies as defenders? I think Wemby and Chet could be two of the most impactful rookie defenders of all time.
Well, I think that you would have a hard time finding a guy in the modern era who was more immediately impactful defensively than David Robinson. A bit unfair because he came into the league as a grown-ass man, but Kareem was a dude who came into the league as a pretty elite defender. I don't think either of these dudes are physically mature enough to reach that level, but again, those were grown men. When you're talking about, for Chet, now he's a year removed from college. For Wemby at 19, I do believe they are very uniquely equipped just with these unbelievable physical traits, their size, their length, and their phenomenal instincts and timing as shot blockers, their mobility and ability to guard in space, but also to make up for any issues they have there with just this length that can erase so many issues. I expect them both to be among the best defensive rookies of this century for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that you make a great point there. They might not be, terribly physically imposing at this point. They may get dominated in certain matchups and on the boards a little bit, but that is game-changing length and size. I mean, I know this clip has been going around on Twitter. Everybody's been fawning at Wemby. It's going to be all year. Look, if you're tired of it now, you better get ready because they're going to wear it out. Wemby's one of the freakish players ever, but he's standing at the elbow, Carson, and he's effectively one step away from the rim, and he's one step away from the three-point line. The recovery and length, it's unreal for Wemby. So I think defensively, both of these guys are going to be super impactful. But I did some adjustments to my rankings, Carson. I initially had the Spurs at 30 wins. I think that's a little low, man. I think Wemby's actually going to force this team to win more games. I think he's actually, going to lead them to a lot more wins in his rookie season than I anticipated. And I think he's further along offensively, too. He just looks really, really smooth, man. Off the dribble, he's got a seemingly unblockable shot in that Warriors preseason game. You see it, dude. They throw a ton of different matchups at him, man. If it was Clay, if it was Wiggins, if it was Looney. Wemby kind of breaks the game a little bit, man. He was dragging Looney out to the three-point line. Looney can't guard that shot. Wiggins can't guard his shot. It's crazy, man. I mean, his length is completely game-changing. So I think in terms of winning impact, Wemby and Chet are going to have a lot their rookie seasons, but I think Wemby's obviously the number one top dog. He's going to produce a little bit more offensively, and I do think it's going to translate to a lot of wins. So it's going to be a tight race between those two guys. Both are two of the greatest prospects I've ever seen, but Wemby's obviously in a different class, and this is the easiest award to predict on the slate.
I also have Wemby here, and just shouting out a couple of the all-time great defensive rookies, Bill Russell has got to be number one. He was the best defender on the planet and the most impactful defender in history. Basically from the jump, I do think he took a leap after his rookie year, but he still would have had that title as best in the league. And mentioning David Robinson, mentioning Victor Wembanyama, we have to talk about Tim Duncan, who was a top 5 defender on the planet the second that he stepped foot in the league. And we have seen some really good defenders in recent years as rookies. Evan Mobley, I thought, was a really impressively advanced defensive prospect. And then as a rookie, you saw that unique switchability and being able to really have an impact in that sort of dual rim protector setup. And then last year, Walker Kessler was a truly great rim protecting prospect. And you do see the real advantage that he has over Wemby, over Chet, is his physicality, his ability to guard in the post on top of just protecting the rim, where he was pretty great. But I do think that Wemby and Chet both have a different level of mobility, and in terms of pure rim protection, they can reach a higher ceiling. Wemby has physical tools that we really have never seen before, and that is not an overstatement. So I think that the conversation is between him and Chet, because I'm so high on both of their defensive impacts. I also think Chet is going to be really efficient offensively for a rookie. I think he's going to shoot the hell out of the ball. I think he's going to finish well around the rim as a roller off of lobs. I think he's going to have a versatile impact, but it does come down to roll to some extent. I think he's going to be a 3rd to 5th option. Scoot Henderson, another guy who physically is ready. He's going to pressure the rim. He's going to be a good playmaker. The consistency of the jump shot may come and go, but he's going to be behind Simons in that hierarchy early in the year. He's going to be behind Jeremy Grant. We'll see if anything happens with him, but he's just a much more proven offensive option. Even Shaedon Sharpe has explosive scoring ability. He's going to compete for a lot of touches there. Wemby, of course, I like Vassell. I like Keldon Johnson. I like Vassell more, but Wemby very well may lead the Spurs in scoring, and we can talk about, all right, how consistent is his jump shot going to be from the perimeter? How polished is his handle going to be night to night? But he is the most skilled offensive player here immediately to me when you blend that with his just outstanding physical tools. So I think he has more ways to score. He may not be more efficient. I don't think he will be as efficient as Chet, but I do think he will produce more raw numbers, and I think he will be even more impactful defensively. He does have the privilege of playing alongside another good rim protector in Zach Collins, who can maybe cover up for some of the weaknesses you would have playing either of these guys at the 5 immediately, which Chet is going to have to do, and I think Chet's going to anchor a good defense. But I'm with you on Wemby. I've been even more impressed by him throughout preseason, and I really think this is a solid Spurs roster. I have them winning 32 games. I can't put them in the play-in conversation just because, I mean, we're leaving out somebody of the Pelicans or the Grizzlies or the Mavericks, whoever you want to take your pick. One of those teams, like a legitimately talented basketball team, is going to miss the play-in entirely. I don't think the Spurs are there. I think they're going to struggle to manufacture good half-court offense. Wemby isn't that sort of offensive number one to me right now. There's still too much to refine. But I think he's going to be the best player on a respectable team, and that's an accomplishment for any rookie. How about Defensive Player of the Year, Logan? Who you got?
I'm giving it to Giannis Antetokounmpo, and again, Giannis could win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year. I thought he had a shot at winning it last year. Giannis held players 17% below their average field goal percentage inside of 6 feet last season. He's a tremendous help side rim protector. He's a great straight-up rim protector if they use him like that. That was the best mark in all of the NBA, and Giannis is just a game-breaking defensive talent. If they're using him in that rover role, in the drop role, he's so long, he's disruptive. He's just a game changer, man, and he can cover so much ground with his length. There are other guys that I considered. I don't think the Grizzlies are going to be good enough for Triple J to get consideration. I also think health is a concern with him missing time. I think Anthony Davis could have a shot at winning this award too, but again, my health concerns are just a little bit too high for me to put him in that conversation. And then Draymond, again, may not be healthy for the start of the year, and I don't really know how that affects his award standing. So I'm going to go with the healthiest guy, but also the guy that I think is the most impactful in terms of overall production. I think the Bucks could have maybe the league's best defense save the Lakers at the end of the season.
Well, you say save the Lakers, Logan. I'm going with Anthony Davis here. And I totally agree. There's a reason that he hasn't won this award before, and it is a question of availability. 80 hasn't played 70 games in a season in the last 5 years. So if you can't meet that mark, it's pretty tough to win an award. But I do believe he is the best defensive player on the planet. We saw just that utterly dominant run in the playoffs. We talked about holding opposing players 16% below their typical field goal percentage around the rim, blocking over 3 shots per game, totally stifling those Grizzlies and Warriors offenses. And he had an unbelievable regular season defensively last year. He improved the Lakers defense by 7 points per 100 when he was on the floor. They played as the equivalent to the best defense in the NBA when he was out there. He is, to me, the best defensive playmaker on the planet as that truly elite rim protector who also has great hands, who can affect scores out of the post with his hands, who can impact those pocket passes. He just takes more stuff away than a lot of other dudes do. Consistently is averaging over a steal a game. So he's going to walk into 3 to 4 stocks per game. That's huge. A big part of Defensive Player of the Year is those gaudy block numbers, and if you can combine that with gaudy steals numbers, that's pretty damn good. And when I look at the elite defenses around the league, the Bucks, well, they have 2 elite rim protectors in Giannis and Brook Lopez. The Cleveland Cavaliers have 2 elite interior defenders in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. The Grizzlies last year had 2 elite interior defenders with Adams and Triple J. I don't think they're going to be an elite defense without Adams out there. They took a real step back after his injury last year. They got crushed on the glass after being the best rebounding team in basketball. Triple J just can't really anchor an interior defense in its totality like that. He's a phenomenal shot blocker. He's lethal out of drop coverage. He's pretty good guarding the perimeter, but that physical presence on the interior, that rebounding presence, he's not at the level of an Anthony Davis, who is also going to eat up those defensive rebounds. And I do think the fact that he has never won will play in his favor if he's healthy enough, because if you think about who are the 3 best defenders of this era, I think you can look at that 2014 to 2017 range and say, all right, Kawhi is probably the best defender on the planet. And then since that point, it's Draymond. Well, actually, Draymond also 15 to 17 is absolutely going head to head with Kawhi in that conversation. But since then, it's Dre and it's AD. I think those are pretty concretely the 2 best defenders. You can throw Giannis in there too, but I value the totality of AD's dominant rim protection over what Giannis does. They're both great. So to have a generational talent like that, to have him doing it for great team defenses, to have him doing it in LA as an offensive superstar too, it feels like if he can be out there enough, he's eventually going to get rewarded for that. And I hope for his sake that that is this year. So maybe he won't be available enough. I'm hoping that he will be. NBA fans, the wait is over. Basketball is back, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is celebrating with an unbeatable offer. New customers can score $200 instantly in bonus bets for throwing down $5 on the NBA. Win or lose, it doesn't matter. You'll start the season with an instant dub.
And with DraftKings parlays, everyone's got a shot at even bigger basketball wins. String together multiple bets from the same game or build your parlay across multiple games for a shot at making your payday even sweeter.
Basketball is more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. New customers can get $200 in bonus bets instantly for betting just $5 only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code NERDS. The crown is yours. How about most improved player, Logan? Who you got?
I'm taking your boy, Carson, a Carson Breber favorite here. I am taking Mr. Tyrese Maxey. Carson, you prophesized many moons ago that Tyrese Maxey would one day be a 25-point-per-game scorer in the NBA, and I think this is the year that he makes it happen. The point is he's going to have a lot more opportunity in Philadelphia this year. James Harden, Daryl Morey, apparently their relationship is unfixable. Harden, again, disgruntled because he can't always be at the strip club or something. I don't know, man. Him and the Sixers aren't agreeing. They're not meeting at eye to eye right now. So Harden is probably not going to play for the Sixers this year, and if he does, Well, no, I mean, I expect him to get dealt at some point. I expect him to sit out. I don't think Harden plays for the Sixers this year. So
Yeah.
I think Maxi's going to have the ball in his hands a lot more. It's going to be a lot more pick and roll with Maxi, him running the offense, running the show, which in turn means what? Well, a lot more opportunity for playmaking, a lot more opportunity to put up more shots. And I want to be clear about something. I've said this a myriad of times. Carson, as have you. We both believe that James Harden is imperative to the winning formula here in Philadelphia, and so I don't think that Philly's going to be better than they were last year. But I think Maxi's numbers are going to be better than they were last year in terms of volume. So I think he maybe reaches 25 points, somewhere between 6 and 7 assists if he's the primary ball handler, and I think that's enough to get an All-Star nod out east. Maybe an All-NBA nod at the end of the season, depending on how many games other superstars play. And I think people have already recognized that he's taken the leap and that he's a rising star. But I think this is the year where people finally fully open their eyes and they go, wow, this kid's really, really damn good. And he'll be a first-time All-Star, which I think will in turn lead to him winning Most Improved, very similar to how Lauri Markkanen did last season.
Well, would that be similar, though? Because Markkanen basically had an entire revolution as a player. Like, we saw him become more aggressive downhill as a driver, more physical. We saw his shooting versatility really weaponized in a unique way. He went from being a flat-out disappointment to a flat-out star. That's what's tough about predicting Most Improved Player, is sometimes dudes just take a leap like that that you couldn't possibly see coming. Julius Randle all of a sudden is a capable playmaker and jump shooter. I mean, look, man, I'm talking about his Most Improved Player season. Yeah, he flopped in the playoffs, but you can't dispute the reason he won that award in the regular season. You can't necessarily see stuff like that coming, and it is tough to win when you're coming from a place of a 20-point per game scorer who was efficient, who was doing it on a good team. But that being said, I am also going with Tyrese Maxey here, just because I am so confident in his ability to produce at a star level if Harden isn't out there. In 13 games without Harden last year, he averaged 24.8 points, 5.4 assists per game on 58% true shooting, and the Sixers still went 8-5 in those games. So I absolutely think that if they want to be an elite regular season team, Harden's ability to add a bit of scoring punch, but more importantly, to bring that consistent high-end playmaking to amplify and beat out of pick and roll, that is valuable. But I still think they can be a 50-win team or close to it without him, and I think that Maxey can really fill some of the void that is left in terms of production. He is an elite scorer of the basketball on all three levels. He is one of the best floater games in the league. He's a great mid-range shooter. He's an awesome pull-up three-point shooter and great off the catch. He's awesome in spot-up situations, attacking closeouts, knocking down catch-and-shoot threes. He's got great feel and deceptiveness out of pick and roll. He's lethal in transition with that full-court speed. He's just a bucket, and his playmaking is a bit rudimentary. As I've said before, I don't know if he could average 7 assists per game, even with the ball in his hands a lot more. That feels like it would require a bit of a playmaking leap to me, but 5 to 6, absolutely. Just as a product of becoming their primary ball handler, he should. And when I look at other dudes who I think are going to explode scoring this year, explode in terms of offensive production, I think Ant Simons has the upside to put up bigger numbers because he's going to be a number one option. I think he is a better playmaker. Ant Simons could average 27 and 7, and I really wouldn't bat an eye. But I think doing it in a winning context, which Maxey is going to do, is just going to be valued more, and he's going to have more of a path to that all-star status because of that. Other guys who I buy into taking a leap, Cade, I just don't think you can give it to a former number one pick who's really only played a year of basketball. That's not the point of the award to me. I've talked about how I'm high on Jabari Smith taking a leap, but the award doesn't go to second-year players. Like, there's just certain criteria that you have to hit, and again, very high draft picks normally don't, unless it's like Ja, where you take a leap to real superstardom. Jalen Williams, I love, but I felt like we already saw sort of that leap last year, and that's the other thing. Mikal Bridges is the favorite to win the award right now. That feels so strange to me when we already saw him average 26 a game for the Nets last year. I get that maybe the totality of the year's production wasn't there, but would we really be impressed if he went out there and scored 24, 25 a game? Would that be deserving of Most Improved Player? I tend to think no. Anybody else you want to shout out here?
Yeah, what about your other boy, Darius Garland? Do you think there's any more room for him to take a leap?
I think Garland would have to go pretty crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
He is already an established star. He was an all-star 2 years ago, easily could have been last year. I don't see it. I think that he improved in terms of his ability to manipulate defenders, to draw fouls last year. He's a great pick and roll playmaker, a really good shooter, but he would probably have to pressure the rim at a different level to take a real scoring leap. I don't see that. And bottom line, he's not the number one option in Cleveland. So, no, love Garland, but I can't see that in the cards for him.
There was one more guy I considered, and I want to hear your opinion on this. What about Jordan Poole? Like, just in terms of volume.
I don't know. I can see him maybe pushing 25 a night, but he already scored 20 a game last year. And I think the Wizards are going to be so bad. I don't really view Poole as a decent candidate here. The one real dark horse who I don't think will put up the numbers necessary, but who I do just like as a guy who I think is going to improve a lot this year, just wanted to shout out Jalen Johnson. I thought he looked really good in preseason. I think that he's more empowered under Quinn Snyder. His shot looks better, looked really good in preseason, and that's a really high-level athlete who's got some really impressive playmaking tools for his size, and I think you put all those things together, you put him alongside Trae Young, the best lob thrower in basketball, weaponize that athleticism some more. I think Jalen Johnson's going to be a good player, but you generally have to take a leap to stardom or something close to it. I think the last 7 guys to win this award have all been all-stars in the year that they won it. I don't see Jalen Johnson doing anything close to that, but I did want to shout out the boy. All right, Coach of the Year. Who you got, Logan?
I got Oklahoma City's Mark Daigneault, and I think this is normally a narrative-based award. You know, you're either a team that wasn't expected to, be in real playoff contention and you really overachieve like Amani Williams, or you're a team that's expected to be really poor and you're about average. I think that because the Thunder are going to make the playoffs, they're going to give this award to him. I think they're going to be really close, if not top 10 on both sides of the ball. Again, I really think that all these guys playing hard with Chet anchoring the defense, I think they can reach that ceiling defensively. And then offensively, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is one of the handful of best players on planet Earth and is going to carry that offense to really high heights. So I think the Thunder are going to make the playoffs, and I think that that's going to be rewarded to Daigneault by giving him Coach of the Year. They're going to be my 5 seed, and I think that's going to be enough to get it done. Like I said, it's going to be narrative-based, so I don't know what's going to pop up. Maybe I have the Pelicans winning 50 games too, so I also considered Willie Green maybe taking home the award, but I'm going to go with Daigneault.
This is kind of unfortunate. We're agreeing on a lot of awards
here.
Man,
dude.
I have Daigneault too. He was already nominated last year, and I just think the Thunder are the team that I am highest on relative to expectations this year. I have them as the 5 seed. I have them winning 48 games. I think this is a team that can be really good on both sides of the ball, maybe top 10 on both sides of the ball with the addition of Chet. I think he'll get some credit for just the organizational competence there, the player development, young guys continuing to improve. And I do think that he's a good X's and O's coach. I think that they are able to do some really unique stuff offensively, just with the multitude of ball handlers of really all sizes who they have, inverted pick and rolls. They've got skill everywhere, really. I just think that's going to be a team that is uniquely good for their age. They play outstandingly hard for such a young team. We talked about towards the top of the league in every hustle stat. You don't see that from one of the handful of youngest teams in the league normally. They just play so far beyond their age, and I think you have to reward the coach for that. It's like what Taylor Jenkins was doing with the Grizzlies teams of a couple years ago. Now those teams are older, they're more mature, and I'm actually pretty down on them this year with the Adams injury and with the Jaw suspension. But getting really young teams to play hard, to play to their strengths, to win a lot of regular season games, that's something that to me should be rewarded. Taylor Jenkins hasn't won one, but I mean, I feel like he's been in the conversation every year. I probably would have given him one at some point, and I think that Daigneault's in a good position to do it. How about 6th man of the year, Logan? Who you got?
Last year, I faded this young man in favor of another one of my favorite players, but I'm doing it. I'm going to give it to my favorite player in all the NBA, Emmanuel Quickly. Man, I always love how he gets just a nice solid chuckle out of Carson Brever.
It's just absurd. You're not a Knicks fan. He's not close to a star player. And yet Emmanuel Quickly is your favorite player in the NBA. It never gets old.
Ooh-wee, that floater is so nasty, right, Carson?
Yeah, but why wouldn't Tyrese Maxey be your favorite player? Because he's so much nastier, and his floater is every bit as nasty, if not more so.
Nah, Emmanuel Quickly's got the nastiest floater of all time, bro. I'm not going to take any Quickly floater slander.
I'm not slandering his floater. I'm just saying Maxey is cooler in every other way and equal footing in terms of the elite floater. But go ahead.
I think that I know that there was a little bit of discussion last season after Quickly broke out about if he was going to start this year. I don't really think that's the ideal role for Quickly. I think that there are guys, as we've discussed, Carson, that are just, better suited for, to come off the bench and fill it up. And I think Quickly fits that. Now, he can play off ball to other guards on this roster, DiVincenzo, Brunson, and I think he can be successful. He's a good three-point shooter and floor spacer, but I think this is the ideal role for Quickly. He can go out there, he can dominate the rock, and he can just fill it up. He averaged 15 a night last season. Obviously, he doesn't win. They give it to Malcolm Brogdon. I thought that was the right call. You actually went with Quickly for our awards. If he's brought off the bench again, the Knicks were one of the best benches in the league last season. They were super imperative to getting them wins. If he's up near 15 a night again, I think he's one of the best bench scorers in all of basketball. He's a pretty solid playmaker, and he's a really underrated defender on top of that, too. Can shoot the hell out of the ball, really crafty, can get into the lane, and has some of the best touch I've ever seen. This season, I want to see it translate to the playoffs. Quickly kind of disappointed me on that stage, but in terms of regular season production, I think we can count on Quickly being great again this year, and if the Knicks bench is great again, I think they give it to Quickly. So I'm going to give that one to him.
Shout out to IQ. He was unbelievable post All-Star break last year. Averaged like 21 a game as the Knicks went on their best stretch of basketball of the year. So I thought he made a really good case last year. I don't think that production, that level is sustainable for him. I do think he's one of the best six men in the league, but he is a more predictable offensive player to me. He's very reliant on pull-up threes and floaters. I look at a guy like Malik Monk, Logan, and I think that's a dude who's got it all offensively. That's a dude who in spot-up situations can kill you with the shooting, can kill you with his athleticism, attacking closeouts. That's a dude who's got underrated craftiness and change in pace out of pick and roll. That's a dude who can get you a bucket in isolation situations. That's a dude who can run the floor in transition. And again, a legitimately good playmaker, a guy who really took strides there last year, good at weaponizing the defensive attention he demands to creating shots for his teammates, playing also in some spacing heaven where he's got shooters all around. But I think he is the most complete offensive sixth man. I value that scoring versatility a lot over IQs. We're not talking about the playoffs here. We're talking about regular season. But who took their game up a level, who looked like a fringe star, dropping 19 a night in the playoffs, who disappeared, who was wildly disappointing. Malik was the more versatile bucket. He was able to impose his will more, especially with that athleticism getting into the paint. He's just more of a mismatch for dudes around the league. Norman Powell is another guy who I think is going to put up big scoring numbers, maybe the biggest of the bunch, but he's so limited as a playmaker. I think Malik's the best all around of the bunch. So maybe last year was the year for it to happen, just because that was when the Kings hype train was going and Mike Brown won Coach of the Year and they were like one of the most exciting teams. They really broke out. But I think Malik himself is going to be as good, if not better, this year. And he's my favorite. Shout out Bobby Portis too. But I just think this award is overwhelmingly about who are the dynamic bench guards who can give you that most fill-it-up offense. Since 2005, 2 front court players have won Sixth Man of the Year. That's in 19 seasons. So I think you have to look at those offensive-oriented guards, and I think Malik is the best of the bunch.
I think that's a good pick. Do you think he's going to get more burn this year? He averaged about 23 minutes a night last season. Do you think they play him more?
I would play him a little bit more. I mean, think about how vital he was in that playoff run.
I'd start him over Kevin Huerter if I'm being honest, and I'd dump Huerter somewhere else.
I don't agree with that just because I think when you're looking at what the different units need, Herter, his shooting is so valuable, spot up situations, handoffs with that starting five. Malik brings that juice, that creation off the bounce where you want to stagger him and Fox a little bit more. He was a much, much better player in the playoffs last year, but I do think in terms of the synergy of those lineups, Herter with the starters makes sense. But you really can't overstate how big of a moment this is for me, Logan, because if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, an unreasonably long time, we're talking since its inception here, I get excited about Malik Monk just about every year. I mean, he would go on these home stretch garbage time runs where he's dropping 20 a night, this outstanding blend of pure athleticism and shooting ability. I liked him as a prospect, and I would just get excited. And then there came a point where I was like, you know what? I can't keep doing this to myself. But we're back, man. We're back. He's proven this is the best version of Malik we've ever seen, and I am in on him having a career season after he already had a career season last year.